That's okay. So thank you everyone for showing up again. This is part two of the three um, think tank series, um, coordinated by Made Men, 100 Days Call to Action. So today we will be discussing economic empowerment, and two things that come to mind when I start to think about economic empowerment in men of color is how can we ensure an economy that is structured and transformed to enable the meaningful participation of entrepreneurs of color. Um, but then that also leads to the other question, which is how can we ensure that we as Black and brown entrepreneurs are well equipped to procure participation and excel. This is why I am very much appreciative that we have a member of the national think tank here and vice president of business development and programs for National Black Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Charles DeBow. And thank you for joining us today as a subject matter expert that we're going to have on today's show, or today's session, if you will, today's show. I do podcasts, so sometimes that comes out pretty frequently. But Mr. DeBow?
Good evening, and it's an honor and my pleasure to join such a prestigious panel or group of active and vibrant minds. I have a disposition that I like to be supportive and not necessarily dare attempt to be dictatorial. So I was telling Kai that I kind of like to listen and get the feel, but what I want to share and to say, and particularly it's somewhat of an intimate convening here, that I encourage to feel confident, to be strong, and this is one that we're not ready to hand off. We're not coming up with some ideas or at least proposing to come up with some ideas and then hand them off. I was really moved with the Philadelphia group coming off of the stark and pivotal actions that they were able to achieve, and damn near flipping the whole state politically, but even more so that they're being recognized for it. I think New York is no different, and it gives us an opportunity to demand with substance and good coalition to go in and ask for what we want and what we need, and particularly from an economic standpoint, that kind of is the lead or the tip of the spear versus a stereotypical social justice, civil rights kind of approach where the economics seem to kind of get washed or negotiated or whatever by the time it comes out the back door or the front door from the kitchen cabinet development. We seem to have kind of been pushed to a secondary or the stepchild kind of disposition. There is some excellent dynamics that are coming about that go beyond municipal, state, county type procurement or engagement. There's certainly the topic on access to capital, and then the advocacy around that. So the access to capital certainly is all the standard low-hanging fruit type institutional stuff, banks, CDFIs, all that. But we're equally as supportive of eating what you kill, making commerce among ourselves and not limiting it by any type of geographics, and particularly inclusive from a global standpoint. I'm on with talking with people in Africa, Latin America, South America, Central America, the Caribbean, and they're really looking for us as Afro-American and particularly unbossed and unowned mentality to lead a way, but at the same time, be able to be mentors, trading partners, and inclusive in that regard. So my position is always going to be kind of like a little bit more of a national or global perspective. And it's fine for everybody do what you do best, you know, with your area, with your knowledge, what you do, whether you are a city councilman or someone that's involved, and as well of being cognizant of the challenges in both historic, systemic, but even more so use this opportunity while you've got a big stick that is beyond your neighborhood or beyond just the city. And under those circumstances, there may be a more attentive ear than has been in the past. And I say that just from the standpoint that we're already ready to demand, to ask, to battle, and not take no for an answer. But I don't think I think you have to do that. So let me not be verbose, and thank you for moderating or leading us here. And certainly I'm here to be resourceful and supportive and to let you know maybe some of the corporate disposition and some of the institutional funds and money that are out here that want to do something. And with that, I'll just leave it as saying that we have a number of corporations that, if nothing else, they want to talk about diversity and inclusion. They want to know how do we reach more Black businesses. But on the other hand, a number of them, which are in fact based in New York City, have made heavy duty commitments with grants and things to try to support the business community at large because their bottom lines are impacted. So we're measuring a minimum of 40% of Black businesses being gone. Gone in the sense of the thing that was incorporated as articles of incorporation may not be what it was, but the spirit and the heartbeat of the entrepreneur lives on regardless. You know, so we're faced with some serious challenges, but we're up to the task. We don't have a choice. I'll leave it to you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think I speak for the group as well. So, you know, I guess, Shawn, do you have any questions to start this off, or should I just ask a question?
You can start it off and I'll play off of where we go. I have, this is my sweet spot, entrepreneurship within our community. I love these types of conversations, but, you know, go ahead and set it off and then I'll do my part to just continue to piggyback and keep it moving.
Sure. Thank you. So, you know, that's you know, in light of the recent events, specifically dealing with, you know, police brutality, we've seen corporations, advertisement agencies, you name it, really showing a commitment to diversifying their establishments, right? So, you know, we've seen a rapid hiring of diversity, equity, and inclusion officers to be somewhat of a force within the organizations to make sure that people of color are being promoted, but are also being, you know, their talents are being preserved and being encouraged. So, you know, within your own industries, we have several people here that come from different industries. Would anyone like to speak to the economic empowerment that you see within your field and the actions that are being taken, especially in light of everything that has transpired in 2020?
I'll jump in. I think Chuck led it off on the right foot here. I think he initially spoke to essentially the mindset we need to arrive at with respect to how we view ourselves within the Black and Brown community. I think when we talk in the context of access, what's available, exposure, so forth and so on, I don't think we're going to be successful in doing that unless we understand how important our resources are within our own community. We can't look to necessarily be saved outside of our community. We have to understand that we have the power within our own community. There used to be a time many, many years ago when Black businesses were of the utmost importance. And I think what happened was, over time, people started focusing, and I think, Chuck, you spoke to the social dynamic involved. People started focusing so much on assimilating into, you know, corporate white America, if you will, being accepted, you know, dealing with affirmative action and things of that nature, that we lost sight of the pride that comes with owning your own business, pursuing your own businesses. Even if you're not successful initially, I think we lost sight of that. And so I think, Charlie, that ties directly into what the question you just posed, and essentially that is, you know, how is it affecting us today? What can we do today? What am I experiencing in my own practice or profession as an attorney? I can tell you for myself, one of the things I've looked to is obviously within the context of the criminal justice system, what are we going to do to ameliorate the chances, for example, of inmates who will one day return to the general society and public? So what I did was, I became a board member of a company which is a spinoff of a company called Credit Concepts. And so essentially what it is this restoring America through recovery education. And what we have started to do is do things like go into prisons and try to educate those who are currently incarcerated on how important it is to have good credit, things of that nature. The company has worked with veterans also who oftentimes have criminal records. They've done things in the past, as a matter of fact, with the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. They started an initiative. This was actually prior to Eric Gonzalez taking over. And so what we're attempting to do is educate. People have to be educated on these issues, not only the issues, but on what things are available so that they become self-empowered. The more of us that are self-empowered, that collectively is going to ameliorate the society as a whole. These are the types of things we need to work on. Obviously, you know, as Chuck indicated, you do what you can. So I think if we can each do what we can within our own profession, I think collectively that self-empowerment, that power is going to continue to grow and morph into something beautiful. I think we just have to start with confidence within our own community. So that's just a touch or a sample of one of the things I feel I can do to contribute to the dynamics in society today.
You mind if I jump in here?
Sure, absolutely.
Just piggybacking off of what Jamie and Chuck spoke about, and I'm gonna share some thoughts, and I want to see where the group goes with it. But I think this is multi-leveled, right? And I'm a product of the New York City public school system, South Bronx, and I have been failed by this public school system in ways that I would never have known unless I did not go to college and sit next to people who were so far ahead of me. And I actually thought that I was pretty intelligent until I sat next to some people who, like, you know, what we did, what you were struggling to do, we did this in our sophomore year of high school. And I say this for a couple of reasons. We're talking about finances. One of the things that our community must do better, and I wonder, Chuck, if some of the dollars that are being donated by these corporations and being committed to within our communities, we were never taught financial literacy, financial education, and it sets us at a disadvantage almost from birth. And the more I think about it, you know, my generation, myself, my brothers, we're the first ones that I know of within our family structure to make a few dollars. But learning what to do with that money is a completely different thing. You can learn how to make it, but then having any thought of financial literacy, to my knowledge, my mom never even had so much of had a bank account. You know, she would do things like money orders and stuff like that. We just didn't know any better. So I think it starts there, is educating our youth that one day they're going to be adults and hopefully they'll get into the job force and become entrepreneurs, and they'll know how to invest their money, where to put it, not F it off buying sneakers and cars with spinning rims and all of that crap. So that's one part. Then there's a second part that, you know, me being a longtime veteran in the music industry, I remember, and you guys are all old enough to remember, Mary J. Blige. She would release an album, you know, every year or two. And she'd go double platinum strictly on Black women, Black people only. And I remember hearing an interview with her, and she was like, yo, I don't care if I never cross over, because I'm going to sell 2 million records anyway. And I think that there's a sense of pride that we don't have within our own communities supporting each other. We think once we made it, it means we have to cross over. We have to spend our money outside of our communities. And I think, you know, and I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on this, is how to bring the pride back that we can buy Black. We can keep the money within our communities and support one another. And it is not a status symbol if once you can afford that white lawyer, you should go out and hire he or she. Or once you can afford that white person, like we were always taught, you know, you made it when you can get the white guy on your team. And I think if we keep the money circulating within our own communities, there's an economic rebuilding that is naturally going to happen.
Shawn, I just wanted to respond to that briefly. One of the you know, and I think I mentioned it on the last you know, time that we had the think tank. One of the most powerful books that I've ever read, especially at a time where I had just started at a university that was predominantly you know, white, right? You know, and I think students of color population, we were at a 8%, and I remember being in an economics class and sitting there, and I had the flyest shit on. I had the Jordans. My whole outfit probably cost like $600, right? And I'm sitting in class, and we have the professor going over the economics, you know, I guess the economics rule, if you will, and you know, and I knew what my mother was making because, you know, I had applied, I had helped her, you know, I had to plug in her information to apply to the school, and when I saw the social economic ladder and where I fell in that, which was in the complete bottom portion of that social economic ladder, I told myself, there's something that I'm missing. There is, you know, I'm in the red, you know, and this is not just dealing with money, but this is also dealing with knowledge. Because
Right.
the fact is that I'm in the red and I'm out here wearing the most expensive shit, you know, speaks volumes to me. But, you know, I also, you know, and again, which is why Carter G. Woodson, which was about the miseducation of the Negro, which is about finding wealth within the community and stop searching outside of the community to build, you know, economic infrastructure. You know, and maybe there's something to be learned from our brothers and sisters in Atlanta. You know, I have some friends that have moved to Atlanta, and it seems that there is a level of camaraderie between black and brown, you know, business owners, and that they support each other. You know, the question is whether in New York City we can build that same infrastructure, and you know, whether we have enough, you know, to become successful, take care of our families, and also put in the effort to network with like-minded individuals so that we can keep the morale high when it comes to, you know, when it comes to, you know, I guess when it comes to understanding that there are Black and brown businesses out there that are worthy of support, that that are that you can trust, that are reliable, that do well in their jobs. I don't think we're doing too much of that in New York. And obviously there's so many different layers in New York, especially, New York being an international city where a lot of folks come to New York for 3 to 4 years and they leave, especially Brooklyn, it's a place where a lot of gentrifiers come in. Harlem as well, and the number one person, the group of people that are gentrifying Harlem, for the most part, according to a study that I recently read, it wasn't white folks. It was Black folks, but from other places that come here. They work for 3 to 4 years and then they leave the community. So there's not stability amongst us as professionals to get to know each other on a deeper level, so that we can create trust and therefore create camaraderie in business. So, I think that's, I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that. I think we could do better with that.
Yeah, I would love to jump in. So a couple of observations that I see in this area is that when working with young people, when I see empowerment around entrepreneurship, it doesn't exist in the way that it should. A lot of career prep programs are teaching young people how to be workers. They're not teaching people how to be leaders and owners, and empowering them in that way. So it's, how do you develop a skill to work for someone else, right? How do you get a food safety license, not to open your restaurant, but you can work at Shake Shack, or you can work in a restaurant, right? So that's one observation. The second observation is that, I can't count the number of times I get contacted by big banks or mid-level banks that are not minority run about coming in and to do financial literacy, because it's coming in and working with young people to build their trust, to invest in these bigger corporations and put their money in these bigger banks so they can continue to make money off of our community. But it's very rare that I find people from within our community or even entrepreneurs coming in and say, I want to come in and teach this young man or this young woman really how to take things to the next level, or that there's an opportunity there, or things that they can be mindful of. The last thing that I think that I've observed that's probably been the most empowering is teaching young people how people are making money off of them. I have one of my teen directors who every year takes a group of kids down to the financial district and walks them into all the wholesale spots and shows them how much it costs for the beats they're buying on the street, or for the t-shirts they're buying on the street, and how they're getting them for $13 a dozen and you're paying $26 for one, right? And understanding how themselves can become entrepreneurs and bring that stuff back to the neighborhood and sell it at a reasonable price, or start their own markets. And I think those three things, not educating young people to be leaders in business or to feel empowered in business, not coming in and teaching our own people about financial literacy by people who look like them and who can support each other, and then by not teaching our young people how people are actually capitalizing off of them. It's three of our biggest issues, and it's across the board. I've worked at a number of organizations, and unless I'm the one kind of making sure it doesn't happen, it'll happen. And I think those are the things that, when we look at just the first level of things, is that we have to start developing, this mindset in our communities from our youngest leaders, that they have to be leaders in their community. Because sometimes it's frustrating. It's like, sometimes we want to teach people who might be just too far gone with it. It's important to try to get the knowledge, but we wait too long. It's like, well, I'm going to catch them when they're already at the bottom, or I'm going to catch them when they've already been miseducated. And it's just like, there's this lack of focus on these young people who's like, they're primed, they're ready, they want the knowledge, but if we don't give it to them, somebody else will. And that's how we kind of fall into these cycles.
Right. Yeah.
I wanted to add something in terms of financial literacy, and Shawn can tell you. I think we was in undergrad. Shawn, remember I got a credit card bill. And you was like, "You got to pay that," and I was like, "Nah, you don't have to pay that. It's all right." Like I had no idea. Right, Shawn? I mean,
Los, guys, and I don't want to go off track, but this is the guy right here who destroyed my credit. We do not have to pay our credit card bill. Me following his supreme wisdom at 16 years old.
I was 18. You was 18 too.
Okay,
17,
wonderful.
Yeah.
He was probably 18 and they were probably handing out free t-shirts, man.
Yeah, and they give us the $5 credit card as freshmen, remember? Like, yeah, you can get started. And
every day with the credit.
It was the union peddling.
The way they attacked the youth and they knew they didn't know was actually really shameful. They were there every day.
Right.
Yeah, always in the student unions. And that speaks to the bigger problem, how these academic institutions, not only do they allow, but they encourage these credit card businesses to set up shop in the student union where they know students presumably are going to be walking by every day applying for credit cards. Many of these students are already in debt because they couldn't afford college to begin with, so they incurred loan debt. And here they are now borrowing money. So, you wonder how much do these academic institutions really care about their students? Right. Essentially, they don't. They don't. They're happy if they're receiving tuition and room and board. But to allow these credit card companies to set up shop in unions, it was awful. Really disgusting. And you see it all the time.
Again, it goes to the earlier point I was trying to make about financial literacy. They're allowing these vultures to come in and prey on the students, right? But there's a yin to every yang. Where's the other side that is teaching these students? This is not the smartest move at this point in your life. You have no income coming in. And I think that is the reason why so many of us get caught. And we learn through taking our lumps, falling down, messing up, and then we have to dig ourselves out of a deeper hole than we started in just to get on track. But it would have been that much easier had there been some type of financial literacy, whether it was in the home or whether it was programs instituted by the city, by the schools, or even the private sector that helped to teach teenagers, kids, that this is what you do with your money and how to be responsible with it. And far too often, we just don't learn those things until it's too late.
And if I can piggyback on that, talking about, and I really believe that it starts with our generation now, because my generation was immigrants. Their goal was to work, to get work, to be able to pay, the bills. I'm Jamaican and I came from Jamaica. So they didn't have the time or the knowledge really to teach financial literacy and what to do with this money or how to do it. Now, my generation, you kind of learn it through the lumps, as Carlos and Shawn attest to it, what we've been through, finding out credit card is this, that stuff. We have to now teach that or make it an importance in our homes to teach financial literacy to our children. Then, and going on further with that, the possibilities of in school curriculums, because to tell you the truth, I believe that should be taught along with math. I could have did without calculus, learn plus division math, and teach me financial literacy so I could maintain or learn that owning is better than renting, life tools. These are the things that are not being taught to youth, and I believe it has to be to us or pushing for a curriculum that emphasizes that, in my opinion.
Great point.
I want to make a point and a positive note on this financial literacy. So, so we're talking about undergrad, all the lumps we took, but 5 years later, fast forward, I'm in law school, and there's a Black professor by the name of Perry Wallace. Never forget him, because, sorry, there's an echo. You can hear me? Yeah. So fast forward, I'm in this class. It's called Community Economic Development, taught by a professor, Perry Wallace, African American professor. And blew my mind away. It was so interesting. And one of the ideas that he taught us through books and different readings is that in our communities there's sometimes limited capital or limited opportunities to grow your business. So you have to barter, or you have to find creative ways to grow your business and grow your idea. And just want to make a point that I still use that philosophy today, and I kind of teach it to my clients and when I speak to kids about being creative and using ways to grow and to empower your business idea. And it goes to some of the stuff, you know, I've been doing internationally. Given that I speak Spanish, I was able to use that as a resource to work in Latin America. I just went to Africa last year. I was flown in by the Botswana government to speak at a film festival, and now I have clients there, relationships, and we're doing a few other things in that world. But I just wanted to talk about a positive note on financial literacy that I learned in law school from that professor, community economic development. It gave me the seed that I'm still using now, and I think that's what we need to get the kids and our community involved in.
So I wanted to say something really quickly. So and I dropped it in the chat, and you know, I heard a lot of really good points. So you know, there's a lot of, I'll talk about something we're not talking about and then tie it in, because I think there's a policy opportunity there. But you know, there's a lot of talk around canceling student debt right now, which I think is a great idea. And I think there's a way to tie in, I forget who made the point, around, well, a couple of you made the point, around credit card companies coming in to colleges, because that's added debt in addition to, you know, if you don't manage the credit card right. I mean, I had that same experience. I didn't think I had to pay it back either, so I dealt with that too. So I think there's a policy opportunity right there to eliminate credit card companies from coming in and soliciting college campuses. And I don't know if that's local, federal, whatever the case may be. The other thing is, and Jamie, I like what you said before about, you know, looking for someone to save us as well. I told you all about the nonprofit I launched on last week's call. And one of the things we were very intentional about was banking Black. So we're starting to work with Amalgamated Bank. And it's actually making me think to take all my personal money and my business money out of Bank of America and put it in there. I think if you know, and maybe it's incumbent upon me or whoever else has these relationships to get these Black banks to come into the community to do some financial literacy programs as well. And speak of, and I didn't learn about Black banks until 2012 or 2013, to be honest with you, and I'm 43. So there's probably kids that have no idea that they even exist. So I think there's an education opportunity there as well. So if we're hearing it from them through life and lived experiences, I think that's an incredible opportunity right there.
I just want to piggyback on that, Andre. You know, education is definitely important for the youth, but you know, I would always say, you know, I would also say education should be very important for the parents, right? Because a lot of these kids go to college, as you know, through the influence of their parents, and their parents tell them, look, you have to go to college, and if you have to take out loans, it's okay, you'll pay that back, right? But the conversation about, you know, what that looks like plus interest, you know, tends not to be had, and that just trickles over to, you know, you getting a credit card and not realizing that if you don't pay it on time, you know, here comes those late fees, here comes those interest rates, and now you're in a deep hole. I think if there's a way where you know, we can invest in Black banks, and these Black banks have systems set up where training or education is had concerning the topic of college funds for families, I think that would be great. I think that would be great because, you know, to me, I think it's somewhat criminal, and we can't rely on the government to actually fix it. But it's criminal if you go and you know, you take out a loan for $100,000 and fast forward 15 years or 20 years, you're still paying for that. You know, or at the end of the day, when you finally do pay it off, you actually paid off double as much, especially if you seek to defer a loan for a time period because you're pursuing your education, you know, in the graduate level, you know, and all of that interest rates just starts to accumulate. And, you know, then we wonder why there's so many young people with great jobs not able to afford their homes compared to their parents in earlier years. So I think when it comes to, you know, debt to income ratio, you know, I think that's one way where we can help one another to make sure that our family members are actually, and parents are holding themselves accountable and saying, you know what, if I have a child, I should open up a college fund, because at the end of the day, I don't want my child to be in debt because he sought to pursue education. That's very important. And then if that child gets a job, once he graduates, he can be able to get a house because the debt isn't that insurmountable, right? And if you get a house, there's so much that comes with it, you know, as far as wealth. Also in the criminal justice, you know, system, when we talk about disparities, the fact that a lot of Black families or a lot of defendants, Black defendants, don't have someone in their home that owns a house to put up as collateral so that they can be released and they can continue working and they can be able to afford a private attorney, right? And prevent, you know, them pleading guilty to a criminal, you know, pleading guilty to a criminal, you know, violation. You know, that has a role in the criminal justice system as well. So many folks are sitting in jail right now because they cannot afford any bail, and they're going to plead guilty because the judge is saying, you know what, or should I say the prosecutor is offering time served. You know, so that's just another Black man walking around with a felony conviction because he could not afford to get released, and because he took, to, you know, in his mind, the best possible option, which was to plead guilty so that he can, you know, regain his freedom. And that was all due to not having a family member not own a house, you know, and that could have allowed him to be free. So there's so much that goes into loan debt, you know. If you know, I'm not sure where we're at politically, if this is just a topic that politicians just throw around just to get people excited, but I do hope that we're moving towards loan debt relief in this country, because it's particularly hindering the Black and brown communities. But we should be held accountable, and we should be telling our friends and ourselves that if we're having children, we should be setting up their college funds from the first day that they're born.
You know, it's interesting. I'm sorry, Shawn, go ahead. You want to jump in?
No, go ahead, Jamie.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, it's interesting. There used to be a time when the community raised you as well, not only your parents. I know for my parents, you know, they were blue collar workers, didn't have a significant amount of money. I had to take out loans for college, take out loans for law school. But I had, at least, I remember my mom always being in my ear about doing the right thing, giving it your all, things of that nature. There are many, many children that simply don't even have that one person. They don't have that one person. You don't have to be well educated to care. You don't have to be well educated to encourage. You don't have to be well educated to facilitate. I think someone needs to mute, right?
Yeah, I think it's quite. What?
Somebody, I'm not sure if that's Kai. Kai,
Yeah, it's
your
Kai.
background noise.
There you go. Thank you. So, you know, certainly that helped, but it really wasn't until I got to college, and I remember studying and reading books like Michael Foucault or Karl Marx, Power and Knowledge, things of that nature, talking about these economic ideologies and Eurocentrism. And kind of similar to Charlie, that was kind of when I started to wake up. to some extent. But what happens is when we leave college or when we're educated, what are we doing after that, right? Then we get caught up in what? Trying to find a job, maybe going on to grad school, things of that nature. But what we were not taught early on was, what are we going to do once we attain that level? How do we spend the money? How do we invest the money? You know, my daughter, she just turned 13, and I was so excited the months leading up to her turning 13, not because she was going to become a teenager, but because TD Bank would allow me to take her and open up her first bank account. I forget the name of the card. And to me, that was different. You know, my parents, I don't remember them doing that with me, but the fact that I was aware of the importance behind what it meant to teach my 13-year-old daughter how to open up a bank account, manage her money, save it, spend it, the value of it, so forth and so on, that makes the difference. Because now what's going to happen is, ideally, she's going to continue to move forward in life, understanding what that means. So when I hand her the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or books along those lines, it's because I'm blessed to understand to some extent the value of economics and the value of knowledge and power. But so many of our youth, they're just simply not in that position. And if their parents aren't able to do enough for them, you wonder, how much can we really expect from them? So I think the more we can do as individuals, the more we end up doing collectively. I think all of us on this call right now, we are in a very blessed, and I'll even say somewhat of a powerful position, because knowledge is power, to be able to make a difference. So I hope that these calls and this platform are going to lead to great things to come down the line.
Yeah. You know, one thing, you know, just to reiterate our, you know, the miseducation, right, of so many of us, or so many of you know, what our communities experienced. I think about, and we brought this up in the last Zoom meeting, which is about the layers, right? And usually it's either black or white. It's usually you're all about money or you're doing the right thing. And there's not too much conversations about the gray area in which you can be a person that is doing the right thing, but is also, you know, also looking to make a profit. You know, if it's something that's been used around recently that I call wind of, is called conscious capitalism, right? Where it's like you do something, you make a profit from something that's actually creating a good in society. You know, I think that nuance has to be encouraged a lot. You know, a wise man by the name of Carter G. Woodson, a wise man by the name of Shawn Carter once said, you know, I can't help the poor when I'm one of them. So I got to get rich and give back. To me, that's the win-win. So the next time you see the homie and his rims are spinning, just know that his mind is working just like them, the rims, that is. You know, and that's an interesting point, because this is a capitalist argument worth acknowledging, not for its idealism, but for its realism. You know, because it's not romantic to say that you're pursuing a field for the sole sake of making money. But however, the practical world demands that we pay attention to our finances. And as we learned through COVID, the government is not going to be there, or we cannot expect the government to take care of us in times of need. And historically, I feel that and I think Chuck mentioned it before, historically, or he hinted at it, it's wise, I think, for us to question whether some of us are who come from underserved communities are ill-equipped in knowledge or even in outlook to empower ourselves financially, right? Some of us go to school, get this formal education, and we specialize in one specific trade, not knowing that maybe in this practical world, in this real world, in this modern world, it's really about creating different types of revenues in order to deal with everything: student loan debt, healthcare costs, getting your child into the right into the right school, living in the very expensive New York City, having to pay these high regulatory fees for those that are seeking to be entrepreneurs. I think we have to create more of a nuance in our conversation concerning finances and creating multiple revenues. A lot of that is not being spoken of. Like, how many of the members on this, and I'm interested to know, are doing, aside from what they're doing for work, are also doing real estate or stocks, right? Or investments in other companies and corporations, are in a position to receive capital gains. Like, I want us to have more of those conversations, because I think that's where the real wealth and economic empowerment comes from, when you don't have to get out of bed to make money.
To chime in here, I mean, there's some really, really great, I didn't realize the conversation was going to go to some of these places, but there's some great points that all of you guys are raising. So great job. One thing I would just say, and I can't overemphasize this enough: you can't teach what you don't know. And what I mean by that is, all of us on this conference call here, this panel, we're the blessed ones. Jamie, you could take your daughter at 13 years old to open a bank account because you knew better. You had achieved a certain level of education, both in school and in the workforce, that there was something there that you said, hey, I need to teach my young daughter from an early age what banking looks like. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us. My mother couldn't teach me that because she just didn't know. My dad carried a wad of money in his sock and hid it in different places in his house. Man had money, whether he just didn't trust the bank or whether he just was hood rich to himself, having wads of money in very close proximity to him. He couldn't teach me what he didn't know. So my first point is, we have to understand that it is all of our jobs. We have done something with our lives. God blessed us to get to a certain level, whether it's the next generation of children, our own or others, we should teach them. So that's number one. But number two is, there is a generation of adults, if I can just switch this conversation around a little bit. And I think that the financial empowerment really comes from not only supporting each other, but betting on ourselves and taking that chance of working for somebody to working for yourself. And Carlos Velaquez, he said earlier how, so many of the kids that in his program, they're taught conformity, they're taught do well, go get a job. And there are a lot of us, even on this call, if we were to be honest with one another, that are great, at your day-to-day job, but you would be paralyzed to step out there on your own. And we have to change that mindset even amongst each other and encourage each other and start to provide the resources that, look, if you have this big dream, if you have this big idea, these are the steps that you would take to even transition yourself out of your current position, your current employer, and you become an employer to someone else. And one of the ways that I give back, and we all come from different walks of life, but this is for me, it's personal, because I just didn't have it. And I created a podcast that I would love, especially for you, Carlos Velaquez, I would love for you to direct your kids in your program to go and listen. And I spend much of my time interviewing Black and brown folks who have made it out, Black and brown folks who are either high-level executives, successful entrepreneurs, or just all around inspiring human beings. And I extract as many gems, as much knowledge from their experience, because I want them to become surrogate mentors that I never had, and provide this information, whether it's to kids or to adults, that look, I came from nothing. I worked 20 years as a blue collar worker, and this is the way I made it out of my job. And now I'm making 7, 8, 9 figures in some cases with some of the people who I have the opportunity to sit down with and speak to. And they're so willing to give back. So I think, you know, even for all of us, we can all make a difference. This is how I'm making my little difference within our community. And I think that just as we spoke about giving back to our youth, there's ways that we can give back to each other to help get us in the right direction, or put us in the right direction.
You know, I also think one thing we don't do enough is call each other out. I think sometimes we're so worried about what other people are going to think, so worried about whether our boys are still going to remain our boys, or our friends, or, you know, a coworker, or even a partner. We don't call each other out. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful or demeaning way. I just mean we have to do more to hold each other accountable. You know, are we really our brother's keeper, so to speak, right? And we have to do that by saying, listen, here's a better option respectfully, and here's why. Let's break it down. And I guess I'm speaking more to those of us who already know, you know, kind of, Shawn, going to what you said, you can't teach what you don't know. But those of us that do know, I think we have to call each other out and hold each other more accountable, because that's going to subsequently trickle down. That ideally it's going to trickle down. I think we can't be afraid, you know, to do that. It saddens me so much when I see it, you know, social media. A lot of us have it for business purposes, but it saddens me when I see so many of these posts that just have, you know, no substance to it. A lot of it is coming from our young generation, and you really see nothing about anything positive as far as, you know, financial literacy in the context of what we're discussing right now, or things in terms of being more positive. And you know what? When you do see it, far and few between, what happens? Those individuals are considered to be corny. They're considered to be sellouts. You know what I mean? You can have absolutely no money, but you're more worried about the kind of car you drive and the sneakers you're wearing. And they'll laugh at, you know, for purposes of this conversation, the Caucasian individual. Maybe they're dressing a certain way, but at the same time, are they more concerned about dressing? Maybe their bank account is big. We don't know. But it's this mindset, this mentality that exists within the Black and brown community, which is all over social media. It's disheartening. It really, really is disheartening. And I think for those of us who have children, I have children, I mean, I tell you, it is a job trying to really make sure what my children are exposed to on and through social media is as healthy as possible, because no child is perfect. They're seeing it, they're hearing it, and in many sad instances, they're believing it, you know, and there lies the danger. So I think, again, we just have to continue to do what we can individually. And yeah, I agree. It starts at home. It really does. It starts at home.
So Jamie, thank you. Thank you for that point. Everyone, thank you for all your points that you've provided today. I just want to acknowledge everyone, because we're about to, you know, I see folks need to leave by 8 o'clock. I just want to acknowledge everyone on this panel right now. Chuck DeBow, graced us with his presence in the beginning. We have here Dwight Willacy, right? We have here Carlos Velaquez, Jamie Santana. We have Shawn Prez. We have Anthony Mayo. Okay, and I think we have Chris John. Is that Chris John?
Christian, I don't know. He's got us on mute or something.
Right. Okay. I just want to acknowledge everyone else here, but I guess it's safe to say that this is coming to a close, right? At least for this evening. So I just want to thank everyone for their time. I know many of you are all very busy, but don't forget that next week we're going to have our third and final panel. Tuesday, same time. Shawn, what would we be discussing on that day? If you know?
I gotta look. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Well, we will be emailing.
We'll be discussing health.
Okay. Yes, we're going to be discussing health on next week. So please, come with your feedback, your questions, your concerns, and we look forward to seeing you all again next Tuesday.
Excellent. Great. And thank you.
And we're going to get Kevin into this conversation. It's the second week Kevin has been on, this part of the panel and has not spoke. So Kevin, you're going to lead us off next week.
There we go. Okay.
No
Take
pressure.
care, guys. Have a good night.
All right, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
All right, guys. Great talk. Great insight.
Likewise.